hundreds of students in my DeFi Academy who are asking me about the price of Bitcoin this week. And I say, who cares what the price of Bitcoin is this week or this month or even this year? This is such a shift of technology. You could even say it's a human paradigm shift, and you can't put the genie back in the bottle at this point. It's going to happen. And when it does happen, like you said, it will be so massive that it will be something that's maybe even hard to fathom. I often say this could be the fastest adoption of technology in human history, maybe of all humankind. We might not see something that's this fast that affects us all, even when we're all on Mars in a couple hundred years, because we'll have already sorted out peer-to-peer financing, right? So I sometimes talk about that. I had Andreas Antonopoulos in my studio some 5-6 years ago, and he said, Brian, your first experience with the internet was sending an email, and that's what you thought the internet was. And I did that when I got to MIT in 1989. I sent an email to my brother at Stanford, and I didn't use the internet for 4 more years because it was boring, right? And then later, I saw the browser, and you've talked about this, when we could see graphics involved, and it was like, oh, wow, the internet's more than an email. And then later, when we saw Web 2.0, the interactivity, we said, oh, it's even more than that. And Andreas always compared these evolutions to maybe the first time you saw Bitcoin, you thought, oh, that's all it was. It was like the email. And then you saw Ethereum, and you're like, oh, maybe that's more like the browser. And now, I'd say today, we're now seeing kind of like you said, this fully interactive, broadband-based financial system where the possibilities, they seem limitless. It's also probably hard to explain that to a babushka on the street there where you're at in Romania. So how do you end up trying to communicate this to the average person on the streets that still doesn't see the big picture?
Sure. There are maybe 2 points here. One is the fact that this will not happen overnight. So it always happens much faster than we think. But then in retrospect, you always put a lot of effort into things. And it's super fascinating that there are several technologies that are now sort of at an inflection point. And this is why I referred to this period that is ahead of us as the Roaring Twenties, because more than in any other period, if you're looking at the world through this technology lens, like it's literally insane. You have so much opportunity. Of course, with this technology, there's also a lot of challenges. But what I'm saying is that if you start looking at it as this new decade that we're not just looking at as in looking at a TV show, but we're trying to actively get involved, actively create, actively build stuff. That's the thing you want to do. And then secondly, of course, it's extremely important to understand what are the fundamental things that could accelerate this, that could make this technology, this adoption a reality. And in our case, we're specifically looking at 2 things, just as in the early days of the internet. With Elrond, we're trying to, on the one hand, build this high bandwidth, low latency, transparent financial system, because this realigns everyone. Like once you have transparency, once you have high bandwidth and low latency, then you basically can send money anywhere in the world in an instant to friends through all this cool services and so forth. But transparency, in addition to that, is a fundamental realignment force where you eliminate a lot of friction, right? Because the current economic model is fundamentally misaligned. There are a lot of interests that are not in the benefit of the, let's say, global population. And putting transparency there changes the game completely, because people, when you see them, when everything is transparent, people change the behavior very, very fast. And then the second element that we believe is core and that we cannot move, without which we cannot have this rapid adoption, is the Maiar application, a simple application that, in a similar way that the browser did, simplifies this entire interaction, enables the simple user to send money to his friends, to start experimenting with this new technology, to experiment with DeFi, with NFTs, and then with all the new stuff that is coming out in a super simple manner. If we can have this transition from dial-up to broadband and this browser moment with the Maiar application, then I believe we can do something that would take 10 years in 3 years or less, just because everything else that we're discussing about comes on top of this. There's no way around the having a high bandwidth network, and there's no way around simplicity. If you have this too, then you can become hugely creative. And this is what we're focusing on, not only explaining, but if I take the phone out and allow you to send money to a username, what we call a hero tag in Maiar, at that point, you understand things in a very, very different way, right? I don't need to get philosophical to make you understand this. My parents can understand this. My grandparents can understand this. And our children certainly can understand this faster than almost anyone.